This is the Games Unchained official review of Spider-Man for the PS4. Spider-Man is an open-world superhero adventure game with a lot of action, developed by Insomniac Games, published by Sony. And for the criteria of this review, we decided the primary categories would be graphics, gameplay, combat, and story, and our subsidiary criteria would be sound and music and playtime. Graphically, Spider-Man looks absolutely amazing. No pun intended, this game was one of the best looking PS4 games that I've played in a while. Notably, I loved being in such an open world that was based on, I would say, a caricature of New York City, but it's pretty spot on. Every building that I knew that exists in New York, Manhattan, and all over that part of town looked pretty much what I would expect it to look like in this world. They spared no details. I mean, from being on building tops, running down buildings, all the way down to the street level, it felt like a living, breathing New York City. And the character models, absolutely incredible. I have to give a lot of credit to the team who brought the character models to life, the animators involved, texture, anybody involved in the process of making these characters. Your characters look phenomenal. Now, they definitely didn't have a true-to-life human feel. I would say that there was something maybe about the eye size or the eye shape that made it a little bit more cartoony than I would like or would have looked for. But other than that, I mean, the lighting, the modeling, the graphics, the rendering, everything that went into this, fantastic job. I would say that we're looking at an 18 out of 20 for the graphics score. Gameplay wise, there is so much to do and so many places to explore inside of the Spider-Man universe here. You're going to be web slinging all over New York City, from tops of buildings down to the street level. You'll find crimes that randomly happen. You can, prevent. You can help people out in car accidents. You can chase pigeons to get really, really good at swinging through the city at high speeds and, being very nimble and agile. They developed so much extra side content for this game that it really fills out the world in a way that doesn't feel like a chore, because it doesn't stop your main story progression at all if you play the extra content or not, but it's there. But the good thing is, it's not just filler content. I always say that when I play these side missions, they're doing things that help me reinforce what I need to get good at to be Spider-Man anyway. Chasing those pigeons as fast as I can and catching them is preparing you for later missions where you'll have to be chasing enemies through the city, or if you need to reach something by a certain period of time, you'll be really good at, swinging through the city, and chasing these pigeons just kind of helps you do that. I'm not going to spoil too much here, but gameplay wise, I love how much there is to do. I love that it's free. It's my own choice to do this. I love that there are suits to unlock by tokens that I get from doing these side contents and additional things. So it's a system that reinforces itself. And as much as I praise the system in this review, I also have to say that I really wish that Spider-Man would have done something a little more original. I know that they borrow a lot of the gameplay mechanics from other games and maybe add their twist or add a new paint job to it, as I said earlier. I would have really loved, though, if they touched on the Spider-Man Peter Parker dynamic in a little more gameplay and not just story. Like, for example, the game does have a photo mode, which, hands down, I love photo modes in games, especially if you're running in 4K. I wish they didn't drop the ball here, because they had a great opportunity to somehow add gameplay to the photo mode, where let's say you had an option to take a picture in the game, and if that photo was like it earned a certain score, or you could take it to the Daily Bugle to get some extra credits for suits or things like that. Because in the comics, Spider-Man and Peter Parker actually had this great dynamic where Peter Parker would set up his camera and try to capture pictures of himself being Spider-Man the superhero saving the day, and he would sell those photos to the Daily Bugle. And since the game had a photo mode, that could have been something that we could have really done. I don't know if they were strapped for time or budget, or if anyone even had this idea, but I would have loved if there was just one or two cool original things that they did in this game that I couldn't say I've seen or experienced in another game. So therefore, I gave Spider-Man's gameplay a 17 out of 20. Combat-wise, Spider-Man on PS4 was a lot of fun to play. I teased the game a little bit for being Spider-Man Arkham because I feel like a lot of the experience was very familiar, if not a derivative of things that I saw while playing through any of the Batman Arkham games, just with a new paint job. The way that the combat flowed, the way that the indicators worked, the way that you could, QTE press to avoid damage, and how you would go from enemy to enemy. It felt like the Spider-Man version of the Arkham combat system. With that said, steal from the best. Batman Arkham, fantastic series. I loved playing that game. I loved all the combat there. So I wouldn't be surprised, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If that is exceptional gameplay, putting Spider-Man inside of that gameplay is a great idea, and I'm not going to call it like a theft. I'm going to call it re-envisioning, maybe inspired by, because there was a lot of really cool moves that I could do inside of that combat system, but with the Spider-Man feel, that I could care less that it was familiar. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I would say I wish there were a couple more things that were, that didn't remind me instantly of, oh, it's the Spider-Man version of Arkham. So I had to give them some things there. But I would say combat-wise, I give Spider-Man an 18 out of 20. After playing through the full campaign and playing the Spider-Man story yet again, I say that I think Insomniac did a really good job of letting me feel like I'm Spider-Man and sell the fantasy of being Spider-Man, but there's not a lot that they can do originally with the story. You know, it was great how they introduced Miles Morales, and it was great how they showed the relationship between Peter Parker and, some of his friends turned enemies, no spoiler alerts. The hard part for them, and I do have to acknowledge this, is we've seen, played, and read through how Spider-Man became Spider-Man I don't know how many times. We've seen and played Spider-Man in many Spider-Man games, and we know the story. As soon as we see certain characters being friendly, we already know ahead of time that they're going to become enemies and how things are going to work out. We understand how Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man and defeats some of these foes. So it's really hard actually for Insomniac to get a great score on the story because so much of it is familiar and already known that we know the spoilers, you know what I mean? Because they're not spoilers, we already knew these things. So I will say at no fault of Insomniac's for actually doing this, because we're playing through Spider-Man yet again, he's tried and true, we know what happens in a lot of ways, we're just going through it in a 4K PS4 experience. I gave the story for this game actually a 15 out of 20. The Insomniac team really did a great job on the sonics for the Spider-Man experience, and all of the music that was created for this game actually I thought was really good. I especially love how the game kind of starts like a modern day superhero movie would, kind of introducing some of the basic problems of the character's life, and then we have this real heroic transition into Spider-Man going through New York with like this accompanying rock song at the beginning of the game. That was probably like my favorite first 2 to 3 minutes of a game that I've played in the last 5 years. So I really like what they did there, but the composition, the score, the music as you go through the game, and how everything around you indicates whenever, something bad is gonna happen and you get sound indications. I think on the basic level, all those things were covered. So then I say, well, how good was the music? How good was the mood whenever I went into a room and the music came in? Or how great did I feel like, or how iconic did I feel like the music was? And I'd say overall, they did a great job. I think that I give them a very favorable music score. It wasn't the best. I think there were some areas where they could have done better, but I think for what I was expecting out of this purchase, I think they did a solid 8 out of 10 as far as sound and music goes. So overall, based on the criteria that we are reviewing the game on today, graphics, gameplay, combat, story as the primary, sound and music, and playtime as the auxiliary, I would say that Spider-Man is an 86 out of 100 when you look at it in total. It's a fantastic score. This game was awesome. It's great to see that this is the bounce back off of Sunset Overdrive from Insomniac Games. I can see some similarities in why that company would be such a great choice for making this experience come to life. They nailed the web slinging. They nailed so many things. The combat, incredible. Even though it felt familiar, it had Spidey's feel, and it was just a lot of fun to get through this game. It is a must-have for PS4. I think anything over 85 is considered serious contention. It's very hard to do 90s and 100s, especially in this day and age as consumers are concerned. But you should have no concerns if you're thinking about buying this game. I fully endorse the game. It was a lot of fun to play, and I'm working on my new game plus right now. Thanks for watching this review. This is Games Unchained, and we'll see you next time.